Hey everyone, it's Alora, and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap-up. So in April I read 6 books, which isn't bad, it isn't great, it's fine. It's been that time of the semester where all of the papers are due and I've had to study for a lot of exams, so I feel pretty good about 6 books in the month of April. That's not too shabby. Anyhow, let's just launch into what I read. So the first book that I read was Hold Your Own by Kate Tempest, and this is a poetry collection. It is sequential, so it does follow one person's story. It talks about a lot of very important topics. I discussed this a little more thoroughly in my poetry video that I did last month, but essentially it covers topics such as gender and female empowerment, broad societal topics such as the internet, how it's changing our interactions with people, but mostly it's focused on gender and finding your identity. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm not usually one for poetry, so that's saying something. So if this sounds interesting at all to you, definitely go check out the video that I did on poetry and pick up this book for yourself. Next up is a book that I actually read for an abnormal psychology class, and that was Beautiful Boy by David Sheff. This is a father's journey through his son's addiction. Now, previously when I mentioned this book, I said that his son had an alcohol addiction. I was wrong, completely wrong. His son in this book is addicted to meth, and this is actually a true account of David Sheff and his family trying to deal with the tumultuous times that are caused by his son being addicted to methamphetamines. It was really heartbreaking. I really thought it was well done. It wasn't the most fun to read. I don't know if the writing style just didn't quite mesh with me. It was very informative. It talked about a lot of different therapy options, but it was ultimately an autobiography. So overall, I think I gave it a 4. I think I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. As far as this kind of book goes, it wasn't my absolute favorite, but I thought that it was very heartbreaking and it was full of lots of information. So after that heavy read, I really wanted something light, so I decided to go with Odd and the Frost Giants, which is written by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Chris Rydell. I absolutely loved The Sleeper and the Spindle, which I read last year, which was by this duo, and so I thought I would really enjoy this. This follows Odd, who has basically a completely messed up leg, and so he's not treated with any respect in his community. He lives with his mother and his stepfather, who doesn't like him at all, and so one day he just decides to go off into the woods and try to make it on his own. Within the first day or two, he encounters this trio of animals who talk, and the story just progresses from there. This is based upon Norse mythology, which isn't my favorite mythology. I'm really partial to Egyptian mythology or even Greek mythology. Norse mythology just doesn't really do it for me. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just that I don't like the cold because I live in Alaska, so I'm like, screw all the northern climate places. I don't know, that's probably not what it is, but anyways, I really did enjoy Neil Gaiman's fantastical writing style, and I love the pen and ink illustrations. Wasn't my absolute favorite, so probably a 3.5 or a 4 stars for this one. After that, I finished listening to an audiobook that I'd been listening to for the last couple of months, and that is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. This is a self-empowerment book. I've talked about it a lot on my channel, so I'd imagine that you've probably heard of it if you've been watching me for any length of time. I love this book. I have read it in the physical format, and I've listened to it on audiobook I think 3 times now. She narrates her own audiobook, which is great because she's just so funny, so I would absolutely recommend checking that out if you're interested. This book gives you lots of helpful tips on how to basically get your shit together and get your life back on track and start doing the things that you love and start making a difference in the world. I really enjoy it, so check this one out. Next up, I decided to go with a middle grade fantasy, so I read The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Kelly Barnhill is the author of The Witch's Boy, which I haven't read yet, but I definitely want to pick up now that I've read this one. This book was actually the 2016 winner of the Newbery Award for Children, so that's a really big deal. That's actually the reason why I decided to pick this book up. This book is less about the young girl than it is about all of the people who helped bring her up. So this book follows this old witch named Zan, who's about 500 years old, and every year the people in this town, this little enclosed space called the Protectorate, they sacrifice a baby to the evil witch who lives in the woods. And the idea behind this sacrifice is that if they give her a brand new baby every year to eat, then she will leave their town alone. But in reality, the protectorate, the people who are running the protectorate are actually just sacrificing a baby to keep the people scared and to make them follow the rules, which is absolutely horrible. But there is actually a witch who lives in the woods. She's just a very kindly witch, and every year she takes the baby and she carries the baby across the forest to some of the cities on the other side of the forest, and she finds the baby a perfect home, and the baby grows up happy and healthy. However, the premise of this story is that one year, Zan decides that she really loves this little baby girl, and she ends up feeding her moon magic, which instills this baby with this huge amount of magical power. And Zan decides that she can't just leave this baby with a regular family on the other side of the forest, so she decides to raise her. So this story follows Zan raising this little moon baby, and there's Glurk, the swamp monster, who helps take care of the baby, and Firion, the tiny little dragon, and it's just a really beautiful story. It deals with the topic of adoption really well. And so I think this would be a fantastic book for someone to read who is going through that process. It's just really well written. It was very entertaining and I wanted to read it. It just felt enchanting and magical, and I completely understand why it won the Newbery, because not only was it enjoyable to read, but it had these underlying currents of important topics that were being discussed. So this was a great one, 5 out of 5 stars. The final book that I read in the month of April was Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. This book is about a princess who travels to a new land because she has been betrothed for her whole life to the prince of this other land, and it's basically a political alliance. So she travels there, but instead of falling in love with the prince, she actually falls in love with the prince's sister. So this is a lesbian princess story. It deals with some politics. They're trying to prevent a war. It definitely has a magical element to it. I enjoyed this. I thought that it was well done, and I thought that it was really good to have the representation and the diversity presented in YA fantasy. So it wasn't just, YA contemporary novel dealing with lesbians, but it was a fantasy that had lesbians as the central characters, and I really appreciated that. But I couldn't quite connect to the characters. They were fine, but I didn't love them. They were separate, you could distinguish between them. I was a little concerned about that at first, but for some reason I just didn't really care about their love, and I didn't really feel it. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars, and maybe it should be more like a 3.5. I think that people should be reading things like this, and I think we should absolutely be supporting authors who are bringing diversity into YA fantasy. But I just myself didn't absolutely love it. The one thing that I did like was that it was a standalone fantasy novel, which is super rare. So way to go, Audrey Coulthurst, for that. Okay, those are all of the books that I read in the month of April. If you want to know what I'm planning on reading in May, stay tuned. I'm going to be posting a video very soon that has my May TBR. I hope that you all had a wonderful month, reading and otherwise, and I hope that you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy. Bye guys.